latest first-party offering from Sony, Concord, is on track to be the worst-performing AAA release of 2024. And you might be thinking to yourself, what is Concord? Because up until recently, I completely forgot this game existed. The multiplayer live service team-based hero shooter was initially revealed at a PlayStation State of Play event in May, and 3 months later upon release, it's failed to find an audience. Let me repeat, the new multiplayer live service team-based hero shooter has failed. Who could have possibly predicted that? Oh, it turns out only very handsome and interesting people could have. Take it away, past me.
I have a hard time getting like super excited for the PlayStation showcases because so many of them just end up being the same bullshit. You know what I mean? Like this kind of looks like Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy kind of looks like all the other ones. You might be saying, RV, you're making a lot of general speculation on something that's clearly just a pre-rendered trailer. Then don't show me a pre-rendered trailer for which I can speculate from. Like, this isn't game. This isn't a game yet. They say it's captured in engine. I have no reason to believe that. I don't know what the engine looks like yet. I'm gonna be so disappointed when they cut to gameplay and it's like a ripoff of like PUBG or some shit. Oh my god, wait, is this an Overwatch game? Oh my god, it is Overwatch. What the fuck was the point of what I just watched? Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Concord! Did you hear that, guys? Concord, the game we're all gonna be talking about next year. This is like gonna be the first game ever to have 0 people playing at launch. Read the room. Time and place. No one cares about these games anymore.
What can I say? I'm clairvoyant, not just observant and pretty. But more importantly, I was right. Concord is hitting, well, probably not record lows, but what feels like record lows, with a peak of less than 700 players. That is so bad that it's performing even worse than some of the biggest gaming bombs of the last couple years. Critically dragged single-player action game Forspoken had more players at launch. Widely regarded live service flop Multiversus has far better numbers currently, despite being months out from its relaunch. And even Marvel's Avengers, which was widely regarded as the worst game of 2020 and delisted from all platforms almost a year ago today, has comparable numbers. Of course, it's worth noting that this is all using data from SteamDB, meaning that all of this is using exclusively numbers from PC players, and of those, only the ones specifically using Steam, but this is a competitive first-person shooter. I think it's a relatively safe bet to say that PC will be the most active platform. You would think that, considering Concord and its player base, or lack thereof, has become a bit of a talking point online recently, there would be a decent amount of people who'd want to check it out for themselves out of pure curiosity, but no, not even that. Interest has never been there, with the game failing to break through 2,500 players during its open beta, and that was before it cost $40. The lack of any form of even ironic enjoyment around Concord is, quite frankly, stunning. This is a level of failure so comically bad that I have to assume the director got cursed by an evil witch at some point in production. But, as stated earlier, it wasn't exactly an unforeseen outcome. Everyone saw the writing on the wall with this one. The game just didn't turn heads. It's yet another shooter that's initial reveal was a 5-minute teaser that told us nothing about the actual game, dropping smack dab in the middle of a PlayStation drought, and not even the most interesting one there, considering Marvel Rivals was also talked about at this same event. And that's the thing about Concord, it's only become something worth talking about now that it has cataclysmically failed. No one knew about Concord before it was this massive story, and that's because the game is just uninteresting. Concord lacks identity, both in its content and in its presentation. Let's talk about that second point first. Concord looks weird, right? Like a game that would be played in the background of a Disney Channel original movie about a girl who's secretly into games. You know what I mean? The entire thing just feels off-brand. The vibe put off in all the marketing and in the cinematic trailer seems to strive for a quirky, silly world full of colorful characters. A motif that is directly contrasted by the fact that they chose to make everything look as realistic as possible. Most of the characters on the roster have distinctly human faces, assumedly so they could use face tracking technology to pull realistic performances for their characters, but why? Did we need that for a game like this? The game has a huge focus on cinematics, with there being a good bit of these little character vignettes for you to watch, and the fact that the game itself matches the animation quality of those cinematics is, I guess, impressive. The idea is cute, but again, did we need that for a game like this? This green guy in particular really grinds my gears. Like, why even make a character a fun alien guy if he's just gonna have hyper-realistic DreamWorks face? They had plenty of time to fix this. The game was in development for 8 years. Much like how Nintendo's brand is fun and colorful experiences for the whole family, PlayStation's brand in the 9th generation has been these huge, high-budget, high graphical fidelity cinematic experiences, or as the internet likes to call them, movie games. These games have been at the center of a lot of discourse lately, namely how they don't take advantage of the video game medium and how their obsession with having the most minute details in their pursuit of realism creates an unhealthy, sustainable standard for the industry, inflates development time, and breeds the most nitpicky fans to grace the platform. And while these arguments aren't incorrect, personally, in broad strokes, I like the movie games. PlayStation games can be so good when you don't have bitches in your ear going, notice how the PS5 has no games. And I would argue that a good chunk of these titles are actually enhanced by their choice to make everything appear closer to real life. The character-focused drama that is to be found in God of War or Last of Us or Spider of Man is very human. The set pieces and scenarios that our characters are faced with are oftentimes very fantastical, but the core journeys that our characters go through very frequently involve a large degree of inner turmoil. And for that reason, I could see the value in stuff like super detailed environments and performance capture. These stories have a direct benefit from our ability to see ourselves in them. Not saying that they couldn't have done this with a different, more video gamey art style. We all know that some of the biggest emotional gut punches in gaming are done in more abstract ways, but there's an artistic argument to be made for the value of something like this. That being said, that argument does not apply to Concord. Concord's commitment to realism is the biggest thing holding back its art. I don't hate these character designs, or at least I don't hate most of them, but the graphical fidelity here works backwards and makes inoffensive designs look so unsexy. Give these guys some cell shading, Ben-Day dots, and the most saturated colors the PS5 can render, like an adaptation of those old Jack Kirby comics, and I think a lot of these characters would actually look really nice. In fact, I can prove that theory. This game has a series of shorts called the Concord Free Gunner Adventures that boasts a more stylized, cel-shaded art style, and while these designs still look kinda off, they look miles better here. It all comes down to one core question. How do you make characters that have these specific features work in a photorealistic environment and not have them come off looking like weird, cheap B-movie side characters? And the answer is not like this. I'd be really interested in seeing the preliminary sketches and concept art behind this roster, because I refuse to believe that the artists knew that the final product was going to come out looking this stale until it was too late to change anything. Honestly, the worst thing about these designs is how nothing about them really stands out. You look at something like Overwatch and you're like, whoa, they got the Mad Max guys and the Grim Reaper and the best character in the game. And then you look at Concord and everyone just kind of blends together. Overwatch characters have these wildly different silhouettes and themes to them, but in Concord, where everyone looks and stands exactly like real humans in real environments, not only does it lose charm, it loses readability. Overwatch's character designs all directly inform how that character plays. Cassidy's a cowboy, quick shooter, probably has good aim. Winston's a gorilla with a jetpack, probably very mobile and in-your-face brawler. Mercy looks like an angel, she's always guarding someone and floating around. Now what does this guy do? Would you have guessed that he's a healer? A lot of these characters don't have an immediately obvious thing about them, which makes it hard for them to stand out. And that's just talking about within the confines of their own roster. Concord's best designs don't hold a candle to Overwatch's worst. And I fucking hate Overwatch. And this Overwatch comparison is not an unfair one to make. Remember earlier when I mentioned that this game was in development for 8 years? Guess what came out 8 years ago? And that's the funniest detail about this whole thing. Everything about this game just points to it being some really desperate attempt to capture some of the Overwatch audience, but almost a decade too late. And that argument even extends to the gameplay, which is apparently not that bad. By all first-hand accounts that I've seen, Concord plays perfectly fine. People like the gunplay, the hero abilities, and it doesn't even offer any microtransactions. A fact that would be cool if it wasn't going to be pointed to as the reason this game failed behind closed doors. I think think just about everyone has been burned by a multiplayer shooter that launches small and promises free updates later, so imagine my shock when I find out that basically everyone who actually played this game seems to have liked it, or at least liked enough of it. The biggest cited criticism is that the game is unoriginal. And yeah, we already talked about how the art sucks, but look at this game's competition. Within the last 3 months alone, we've had Concord's launch, 2 preview tests from Marvel Rivals, and Team Fortress 2 developer Valve finally officially announced their newest hero shooter, Deadlock. And if given the choice between the team-based hero shooter featuring the legends of Marvel Comics with a distinct art style, the one made by Valve, the grandfather of the genre, or the one with some weird, ugly, generic sci-fi guys, I'm not choosing the last one, I'm sorry. I've seen a lot of people use the failure of Concord as some kind of pillar in their online debates about whatever, but I think the honest truth is that no one wants to play a new live service multiplayer shooter in 2024. The biggest multiplayer shooters we have nowadays are the ones that have been around for a couple years, the ones that already have players hooked and found ways to weather the storm of keeping things interesting in the long term. Despite aiming to have a back-to-basics approach with both its progression systems and its monetization, a directly pro-consumer move, Concord never had a chance in this environment of worldwide mega hits. The industry has changed. Regardless of whether or not it's good at what it sets out to do, the exclusively multiplayer live service sci-fi shooter in an unestablished IP that cost $40 upfront wasn't going to land. Halo Infinite barely landed, and that was free to play and Halo. If there's any hope for Concord, it's here, in the fact that it actually reviewed decently well. It's not amazingly great for developer Firewalk Studios, but the fact that every review starts with some form of, the game is good, but should be a sign that there is something here. I'm not 100% sure if it necessarily deserves it, but I think a small part of me wants this wet, kicked puppy of a game to find some semblance of success. Over the years, I've played a lot of live service games. I've seen them get flat out canceled with their online-only content wiped from this plane of existence. I've experienced developers who start out making huge promises only to cut more and more corners when the player base eventually begins to dwindle. I've had games begin to slowly change over time until they no longer resemble the game I fell in love with. I've been around the block and then some. It's a game format that is systematically designed to leech money from its users, but most of them do it in a way that keeps things nice enough to the lone free player that it's almost a faux pas to even mention the predatory stuff. And while I've spent the better part of the last 10 minutes tearing this game a new one, I find the discourse around Concord to be oddly depressing, because while everything about this game reeks of delusional confidence, it's not like in an evil way. There's a lot of choices here that I actually quite respect. Like the fact that they launched this without a free-to-play model so they wouldn't have to rely on money grubbing their fans. And at that, they released it for less than AAA standard. Or the fact that they know games like Overwatch and Fortnite have fans grasping at straws for character and lore details, so they put a large focus on cinematics that build out their world in the game itself. Or how about the fact that Concord is one on a relatively small list of games being featured in Secret Level, the upcoming video game anthology series by Love, Death, and Robots producer Tim Miller. Or the fact that this game features a deliberately diverse cast and then proceeded to have one of the worst launches of all time. It's just a bummer, you know? My only enlightened take on this subject is that I feel bad for the developers. Some suit at Sony probably wanted their own piece of the Overwatch pie and just kept throwing money at it until long after it stopped being an idea worth pursuing. 8 years is a long time. 8 years of game development is a crazy long time. That's the kind of time frame that Sony only assigns to its biggest, heaviest hitters, and all of that work was wasted on a game that failed to read the room so badly that it has less all-time players than I have YouTube subscribers. And while the games industry, and PlayStation specifically, probably deserved to learn this lesson, these devs who willingly put their names and faces on the marketing for this product don't deserve the maelstrom of shit that's no doubt being thrown their way. They don't deserve to have their game released against 2 gaming juggernauts. They don't deserve to be used as pawns in some flame war they didn't sign up for. They don't deserve the fact that the majority of this team is probably going to be laid off by the next financial quarter, because that's just how the industry rolls now. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I find the fact that everyone is celebrating the failure of Concord a little callous. After this last year of endless layoffs and the seeming lack of rhyme or reason to any of the games and studios that get shelved, I feel a little yucky about considering this a win. Concord is stupid, ugly, unoriginal, chasing design trends from 2016, and probably deserved to fail, but at the same time, Sony liquidated the studio to fund this disaster. And while it's easy to point and laugh, I have a hard time not feeling empathetic about the people who lost jobs or the people who are forever going to have their names attached to this. And if you had been even the slightest amount curious about Concord and wanted to check it out for yourself like I was going to as a part of this video, as of today, you can't. On September 6th, 2024, Concord shut down its servers, delisted from all retail platforms, refunded all of its players, and went offline. This is unprecedented. The game was online for less than 2 weeks, and as of right now, it's lost media. A statement released by the developers said that while the experience resonated with some players, the game didn't land the way they intended, and they're taking the game offline to explore further options. And I have to admit, I'm rooting for them. Based off everything we've seen, I like these devs. The commitment to resuscitating the game instead of letting it sit and slowly die out is commendable. Shittier companies wouldn't try so hard to fight for its consumers, and greedier companies wouldn't refund people. You could cynically make the argument that they're only doing this to garner whatever goodwill they can before they inevitably relaunch free-to-play, and have only managed to capture my sympathy by using the developers in the marketing, thus making me worry for the safety of my fellow man in the ever-deteriorating job market that is the games industry, but I'm looking on the bright side, you pessimistic fuck. I don't know if we're ever actually gonna see Concord again. I've been through this whole relaunch debacle before with Multiversus, and there was a long time we all thought we would never hear about that one again, but I'm interested in seeing it happen. People liked this game. The biggest gripes were the lack of originality, lack of content, and that it looked bad. All relatively easy things to address with some added time. However, I do have a word of advice. You can't fuck it up. You only get to be the worst game in the world once. People have eyes on you. This is Concord's 15 minutes of fame. It may look bad, but you gotta use it. If the game manages to relaunch and looks cool and gets even a little bit of a fan base, it will be an all-timer for the industry. People love to hear stories like this. But if it relaunches feeling, and more specifically looking the same, no one will care. Concord will be a distant dream only remembered by those who want to laugh at it. And you know, maybe I'm just an emotional fool, but there's potential here, and I think the people who made this game deserve to see it realized. Good luck, Concord. I'm rooting for you. See ya!